Hi friends, welcome to today's video. My name's Stephanie and today I'm going to be showing you Holo Taco's new Cookies and Cremes bundle. This bundle features 5 creme finishes, 1 Milky Shimmer, which is a new finish for Holo Taco, and then a Black Flake topper. As always, I will save more of my thoughts at the end after some comparisons. For now, let's just get into the swatches. The first polish we have is Brownie Points, and this one is described as a dark chocolate brown creme. This one was absolutely decadent. I really love dark browns like this that are just so rich and fudgy. I am not usually one to actually enjoy chocolate because it just gives me a stomach ache, so I much prefer wearing it on my nails, and this one was just so perfect. It was also fully opaque for me in one coat, probably because it was so dark. The next polish is Ginger Snatched, and this one is described as a medium cinnamon brown. I also really love the color of this one. I just thought it was so cozy and so flattering, and this one had another super creamy, rich, opaque formula where it was opaque for me in one coat. As a reminder, especially if you're not familiar with me and my channel, I usually am a little heavy-handed, so if you prefer doing thinner coats, you probably will need just 2. The next shade we have is Butter Me Up, and this one is described as a pale whipped buttercream. I also really enjoyed this polish. I thought it was just the perfect buttercream kind of custard color. I feel like it's the exact shade of the inside of a Boston cream donut, which is my favorite, so I just really like this one. And this one also had a really lovely formula. As you can see on the first coat alone, it gave really great coverage. It wasn't as streaky or thin as pale yellows tend to be, though I feel like we definitely have come a long way with a lot of indie brands just making really great formulas, especially for yellows. So I only needed 2 coats for this one to make it fully opaque for me, but I could see you needing a third depending on your application and your nail length. Next up we have Peri-Social, and this one is a bright periwinkle cream. No surprise, I absolutely love this one. I feel like I shared my favorite periwinkle polishes not too long ago, and this one can easily fit in with that video. It is just so bright, so pretty for spring, and this one had another super creamy and lush formula that was fully opaque for me in just one coat. And the last creme in the collection is called Sweet Tooth, and this one is just described as a pale pink. It definitely is a super light white-based pink polish, but it still had a really fantastic formula. I feel like sometimes pastels that are this white base can be a little too thick and chalky, but this one, as you saw, had really great coverage on the first coat with a buttery, smooth formula that was just really easy to work with. So I only needed 2 coats to make this one fully opaque for me, but because this is such a light shade, similar to Butter Me Up, I could see this one needing 3 coats depending on your application and again your nail length. Either way though, it's such a cute pink. I feel like it's looking a little too white here on camera, but there is more pink to it. Next up we have Milky White Shimmer, and this one is, you guessed it, a Milky White Shimmer. So even though this one is described as having a jelly base, I personally would call this more of a crelly just because of how pigmented and buildable this is. Jellies, in my opinion, are a lot more sheer and offer a lot more translucency. So even when you layer them in 3 coats, you pretty much still see straight through to your nail line, almost giving like a stained glass kind of effect. But because this one is more pigmented and has a little bit more coverage, I feel like it just doesn't give that same jelly glassy effect. It's just a lot more cloudy and milky where it kind of blurs your nail line a little bit more, so that's why I would call this a crelly personally. But either way, formula wise, I wasn't super impressed with this one. As you probably saw from the first coat, it was obviously a little bit sheer, but just not very even coverage, and it didn't self-level the best even on 2 coats. I definitely don't mind the sheerness of this at all. I just didn't love that it wasn't super even coverage. So I definitely think you have to be careful with your application for this shade because it might not be super even, or you just might need 3 coats to even everything out. And rounding out the bundle, we have Holo Taco's newest topper, Black Flake Taco, and this one, as the name describes, is a black flaky topper in a clear base. The flakes are this matte black in this shredded kind of flaky shape in an assortment of sizes that are kind of ranging from super tiny little specks to these larger shreds. I know that black flakies can be so divisive in the nail community, but I really do love this one, especially over Milky White Shimmer, because I really love cookies and cream ice cream. It is my favorite flavor, so I feel like this combination is just so perfect to recreate that, and I just really like the different sizes of the black flakes in here. And I also really like how dense this was too. As you saw, I did one coat over my bare nail. Well, it had a base coat, and then here is one coat over all of the cremes in the collection. I feel like over these lighter pastels like Sweet Tooth and Peri-Social, it gives like an Easter speckled egg kind of vibe, which I think is super cute, but it looks nice over the other shades as well. I guess the only one I didn't love was Black Flake over Brownie Points, just because it was so dark. The colors just kind of blend into each other, so it's kind of hard to tell you're even wearing a topper. Like, you see something, but it's just hard to make out, especially if you're not in direct sunlight. So personally, I wouldn't wear this combo, but I still like the others. So here I'm wearing 2 coats of Milky White Shimmer on my other hand because it's just a little bit shorter, so I kind of wanted to see how much coverage you get. I also do have some pretty bad peeling right now on this hand because I showered without using a base coat. Please never do that, especially if your nails are peeling ever so slightly, because it's just gonna make them worse. So my unsightly peeling aside, I feel like this doesn't look too bad on this hand with shorter nails. I feel like you can get away with 2 coats. It wasn't as uneven, except for maybe on my thumb, which is obviously a little bit wider. And then here I decided to layer Black Flake Taco over the 2 middle fingers and then do a 3rd coat of Milky White Shimmer over my pinky, index, and thumb. And I definitely like how this looks a little bit more just because it's more even coverage, more built up. You do still see a hint of nail line, but I think it's more obvious in the shade. In the sun, it's kind of hidden because of that white shimmer. And here I'm wearing 2 coats of all the cremes from the bundle. Even though Ginger Snatched and Brownie Points were 1 coaters in my initial thumb swatches, I feel like in direct sunlight I could still see some lighter spots where my nail was coming through, so I did need a 2nd coat for them. But Peri-Social surprisingly was still a 1 coater for me. Again though, depending on your application, like if you prefer doing thinner coats, you might need a 3rd coat for the shades Butter Me Up and Sweet Tooth, but definitely not for the others. I do think they would be opaque enough in just 2 coats alone. And here is the same skittle worn with Black Flake Taco on top of that. You can definitely see that it's there over Brownie Points in direct sunlight, so there is some contrast, but again, if you're in like shade or just regular low lighting, it's not going to be super noticeable. So again, I wouldn't really go for this combination, but it looks nice over the other shades. And here is the bundle lineup. Definitely an interesting mix of neutrals and pops of color. I really thought that the periwinkle was so out of place, but seeing the mood board definitely brought it together, where it's not just ice cream, it's also other sweets and cookies and whatnot. So moving on to comparisons, we're starting with Brownie Points and looking at it next to Mooncat's Kafkaesque, which is their brown cream. I do want to mention it's not super color accurate here in these bottle shots, but you can still see a difference where Mooncat is a little bit more yellow leaning and not as warm as Brownie Points. So I thought it might be closer to something like OPI's Brown to Earth, which is one of my favorite dark, rich, warm brown creams. But as you can see, this one's even darker and I would say a little bit warmer, if not more muted in general. But seeing them on the nail, you can definitely tell these apart where they are just not dupes. This definitely is closer to being color accurate, but Brownie Points is looking a little bit more like a milk chocolate kind of color. It is a little bit darker in real life, but still nothing like the other 2. Next for Ginger Snatched, I wanted to quickly show this next to Stay Grounded from the Down to Earth bundle in the fall. That one is obviously much more of a yellow caramel mustard kind of color. It's not as brown or as warm as Ginger Snatched is. I thought a closer comparison would be Olivav's Goldstone from their Neutrals collection. That one is a little bit darker and more red leaning though, but still kind of similar color wise. Like, people were saying that Ginger Snatched looked like a milk chocolate kind of color, but it's definitely a lot more red red. So I also wanted to show this next to Essie's No To Do, which I would consider like a very true milk chocolate sort of brown. It is picking up lighter here on camera though, where they look really similar, but on the nail you can definitely tell these apart. None of these are anywhere near dupes. Ginger Snatched I think still leans closer to Goldstone, but it's still several shades lighter. But because of how dark Essie's No To Do looked, I thought maybe that would be closer to Brownie Points, but as you can see, these are also not dupes. I still think Essie is a really good milk chocolate color, and Brownie Points is that perfect fudgy brownie shade. Then for Butter Me Up, I had to see this next to Olive Ave's Lemon Blossom, which sadly has been retired, but it definitely is the closest pale yellow cream that I have in my collection. They do look really similar color-wise, but there are some slight differences where I would say that Butter Me Up almost has a little bit of a more vanilla, warm, creamy sort of color to it. And it also does have a better formula. I'm wearing 2 coats of Butter Me Up and then 3 coats of Lemon Blossom. So if you happen to miss out on that shade from Olive Ave, I would recommend picking up Butter Me Up. Then for Peri-Social, I wanted to quickly show this next to Holo Taco Serial Killer from last year's pastel bundle. That one is a true lavender purple cream, so there's no periwinkle leaning color to it. As you can see, Peri-Social definitely leans a lot more blue than Serial Killer, but I would still say that it leans more on the purple side of periwinkle. It really reminded me of Mooncat's Sweet Nightmare from their Technicolor Dreams collection that I reviewed not that long ago. That one is also considered a periwinkle, but I always considered it a little bit too dark or maybe just too purple leaning to be a true periwinkle, but as you can see, they're pretty similar here in the bottle. And I also wanted to show it next to Olive Ave's Lilac, which is what I would always consider like a very true periwinkle shade. Obviously, there's a whole range of what periwinkle can be, but this is one that I really love because I think this one is perfectly balanced between blue and purple, but as you can see, it's definitely a lot lighter and maybe more muted too. Peri-Social and Sweet Nightmare both have a bit more vibrancy to them, but Peri-Social is a little bit lighter as well, so they're not exact dupes. Then for Sweet Tooth, I was immediately reminded of ILNP's Twirl from this year's Valentine's Day trio. That one is another super pale ballet-inspired pink. I thought these were going to be a lot more similar than they actually are. Twirl has a little bit more of a brighter, almost bubblegum pink kind of color. I feel like Sweet Tooth is a bit more white-based, so I thought maybe it'll be closer to something like OPI's Let's Be Friends, which is one of their super, super pale pink shades. But as you can see, this one pretty much looks white next to these other 2 pinks, so hopefully you can get a better idea of the actual pink color that Sweet Tooth is, where it really is like a super white-based pink polish, but you can definitely tell it's still pink. And I feel like compared to ILNP's Twirl, it looks like it has a little bit more warmth or almost peachiness to it, so I thought maybe it would be a little bit more similar to Olive Ave's Peony, which is like a pale peachy pink shade, but as you can see, that one is definitely more of a peachy pink color and Sweet Tooth is just pink. So yeah, I ended up not having any dupes. And lastly, for Black Flake Taco, I of course have to show this next to Cirque Colors Spotted from their Glaze collection a couple of years ago. It's the only other matte black flaky topper in a clear base that I have, so they definitely sound like they would be dupes on paper, but there is a noticeable difference on the nail, where even though both of them do have some variance in the sizes and shapes of the actual flakies, the main difference is in their density, where Holo Taco's is obviously a lot more dense. Cirque's, I would say, is a bit more base heavy, so it depends on how sparse you want your flakies. But I do think Holo Taco has some bigger flake pieces in them too. So that wraps up my swatches and comparisons for Holo Taco's Cookies and Cremes bundle. As always, I would love to know what your thoughts are on this release because overall, I do like them. I think the colors are cute. They're just generally colors that I either like the light pink or the periwinkle, or they're colors that are kind of unique to my collection, like the 2 browns. I was pretty surprised I didn't have anything similar to them. And overall, they had really great formulas as well, so it's hard not to recommend them, especially if you don't already have shades like this in your collection. Like, they're not bad by any means, but I can see why some people felt like maybe they were a little boring or just underwhelming. I can get that. I think the most exciting thing about these was actually their marketing. Like, I love all of those promo photos with the ice cream scoops and pouring brownie points all over the ice cream. It all just looked so yummy, so I really do love them for that reason. I know that not everybody's also gonna love the Black Flake Taco because Black Flakies are just super divisive in the nail community. People either love them or hate them. I feel like I'm pretty in the middle though. Like it kind of depends on the polish or like what you're wearing it with. Obviously, as you saw over the white polish, it just gave the perfect cookies and cream kind of ice cream. And I'm sure it's gonna look amazing over a mint green if you like mint chocolate chip ice cream. So yeah, overall, I think they're cute. They had great formulas. I don't have that many complaints about them. The only one that I have like criticisms about is Milky White Shimmer. While I am excited that Holo Taco is giving us even more new finishes that they haven't done before, this one just ended up falling a little flat for me. And not just because it's like a milky white, because I do love those. It really was more of the formula where I feel like it just didn't self-level the best. I've tried my fair share of milky white polishes, whether they have shimmers or they don't, and this one just wasn't super impressive to me. So I definitely am interested in seeing what other colors they'll give in this finish. But yeah, those are pretty much my thoughts on these, so I would love to know yours down below so we can chat about it. But thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!